welcome to the show, Arlan.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So I was reading a book and I couldn't put it down. It's it's about damn time. And your life story is just so inspiring and full of U-turns and full of aha moments. And for me, the key words that came to my mind is bravery. It's like
Hmm.
a lot of people in your place would have given up and you didn't. And you proved that you could succeed really well by pursuing, your headlines and the things that you wanted to achieve in your life. And I wanted to ask you this question in the beginning, which is, what is your secret to bravery?
When you say bravery, what I hear more so is like I have a tolerance for risk taking that I know a lot of people don't have. And so I guess the bravery comes in like I'm certainly still the person who can do a good cry on a floor. I can still be vulnerable and know that it's not all like highlights and great stuff. But I the my ability and my willingness to take risks and understand more times than not this is not going to work. I think that's where it comes from. And I don't know where it originated within me, but I felt like it's always been there, that part of it.
Right. And you said in your book, if you have no assets, you have to become the asset. And the way that you achieve it is through knowledge about your corner of the world. And you went from broke, homeless, to breaking into the music industry and then becoming one of the most powerful people investing in startups at the moment. And I don't take it lightly. I think this is really true. What I'm saying, I really believe in that. It's just super powerful, the way that you talk about your thesis of investment and the way that you want to change the world with that, right? Mm. And how do you, if someone is starting right now in the position where you were before you started Backstage Capital, how do you select, how do you filter what's good knowledge, bad knowledge, what's good advice versus bad advice so you can put that into practice?
I've been thinking about that a lot recently because there's no perfect way of doing anything and there's no magic blueprint or potion or any of that to all of this is through trial and error. But you can save time by listening to what others have gone through themselves. Obviously, that's why you're doing the work you're doing is to give that knowledge, that knowledge out to people. So I think about it with like when you think about taking advice, a lot of it can be noise. A lot of it can be good advice, but not for you. And some of it can be bad advice. And some of it can even be with a malintent advice. Um, I think um, it's about crafting judgment, your instincts, and crafting your judgment, because your judgment is really your the bigger version of your instincts over time, right? Mm. So again, it comes back to risk taking. So if you follow your instinct and 50% of the time you're right and 50% of the time it turns out that you shouldn't have, you're starting to understand like an algorithm when you're making the right decisions and what about that moment pinged your instinct and what about that was instinct or it was sort of veiled pressure or veiled stress on yourself. Like, I should probably do this other thing and I'm going to call it instinct. So it really, what I mean by this is that it just takes time and a few examples and situations where you are again willing to take the risk of being wrong so that you can hone in on listening and understanding what your good instincts sound like and feel like. And then over time, that entire holistic process becomes your judgment. It becomes I trust my judgment now. I don't know. I didn't trust, and I don't, and I know my judgment was off at 25. I know my judgment was off at 32, but it was better at 32 than it was at 25, because I would go and I would go bit by bit. So today I feel very, very strong faith in my own instincts and in my own judgment. And I also understand that I still will be wrong because no one is perfect. But I feel so, so in tune with my instincts and with my judgment that I can make decisions very quickly, and I can own up to those decisions, and I can take the fall if they end up being bad. And that to me is like a really, it's almost linear process, that very few linear processes exist.
I love that, because it's almost like you're taking off the pressure on yourself to be taking on the wrong, right? You're like, I'm going to learn. And sometimes I'm going to be wrong, but I'm just exercising my muscles to be in a much stronger position tomorrow.
100%. And if you have that all wrapped up with a mantra of do no harm, like you're not just being unwieldy and I'll just try whatever because I'm trying to, So if you have all of that we just described, and then you also say, every instance I can do no harm, you start to really whittle down to a very, very strong sense of self and a very strong sense of what your judgment is.
I love it. I love it so much. You say also that you were super in love with the music industry, right? When you were breaking to the music industry and carving your space there, but then you found your true calling, which is to build an investment fund and become an investor, an author, a founder, a speaker nowadays, a podcaster. What was the shift in your mind? When did it happen that you're like, wait a minute, I love what I'm doing, but there's something so much bigger here that is calling me? What was that shifting mindset?
Yeah, and I think the story itself has been documented and I talk about in the book, but the shift, the difference between following a dream, because being an investor has never been a dream of mine. Being on the road and music was a dream of mine since I'm 13. So following a dream, getting pretty close to it, and of course, every time you get to your dream, you notice the reality of it. But it really had some amazing moments and could have gone on to, versus following a calling. So one is something that you're going after, and one is something that is pulling you. And that's the difference in these two cases. Like, one was, I really want to be on the road and I want to meet people and I want to do great things, awesome things with these. And I love live music and all of that. And I'm good at it. And the other one was something I couldn't ignore, something that was like, I couldn't deny. And something that turns out that all of my lived experience so far is perfectly shaped to work and do what I do now. And you listed a lot of things that I do now, but they are all in line. I think of it like, when you see a flock of birds and they're all going in the same direction, very, very, very in sync. So in the middle of that, you have the investing. And then you have the amplification of that with the media parts of what I do. And then you have the education part of what I do, and this and that and the other. It's all in the same direction. And it is all towards catalyzing entrepreneurs, mainly entrepreneurs who are underrepresented and underestimated, all towards, like, you're trying to move an entire boulder of what the last 400 years of life and the last 70 years within venture and startup investing. You're trying to move this boulder. So of course you're going to have multiple ways of doing that. You can't just do it in one way, in my opinion. So that all of that comes together.
Yeah, I think people feel it. I feel it. It's like I can feel that you are on a mission that it's it's inspiring, it's empowering, it's powerful. It's just, you pull people into Team Arlan, right? Because I think you have such a clarity of what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting because my next question is very much aligned with that, and I'm going to quote someone who I'm a big fan of. I'm not sure if you are, but Maya Angelou, the American poet,
Of course I
and
am.
yeah, she says there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And you say, be yourself so that people looking for you can find you. And I absolutely love that. When I read that quote, I literally highlighted, was like, this is so true, right?
Mm.
And how, for people who are struggling with, embracing themselves and finding themselves and like being courageous enough to show themselves to the world, what do you say to them? What would be your biggest advice to people who are struggling right now with, finding that kind of sense of purpose?
Yeah. What I've come to understand is that it's natural and normal to be struggling at any point. There is a struggle that I have today that is not a struggle that we've talked about, but it is a struggle, and I'll work on that. And 5 years from now, I'll be able to talk about how I overcame that. There's all sorts of struggle at all times. So to be in that struggle is not a problem. You are not wrong. You are not weird. You are human, and you are experiencing something that everybody has experienced at one time or another, and maybe experiencing now. What has helped me over the past 5 years in particular is understanding that, not all this is about me or about the person, the one person. So you, you may be representing someone else in your overcoming or working to overcome your struggle. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you just feel like, oh, I'm not supposed to speak up about this, or I'm not that great at this thing, but I really love doing it. Who am I? I'm just one other person who is this type of artist, or one other person who has this idea. Everybody has ideas. You're in that mindset because everybody has been there. What if there are there's someone in Wyoming, there's someone in California, there's someone in Lisbon, and there's someone in Helsinki, and there's someone in Chile. What if there's someone in these pockets and they all are feeling the same way, and they somehow come across your YouTube video talking about it? They somehow come across the blog post that you did. They somehow come across the the comment you left in a chat, because you dared to just do and share yourself. And what if, when you did that, they then felt seen and represented and understood and heard, and it sparked something in them? It is not always just about, I can't do this, so it stops with me, and because I'm no good, because we all, like, everybody's had that feeling of, oh, I suck at this, or some people have it much worse than others. It's deep anxiety. But what if the thing that you think is so normal and is not a brilliance and is not a expertise, but what if it's just enough that it reached someone else? And can that be enough for you? And silencing that, to me, is the tragedy and the travesty I think Maya Angelou was talking about in her statement just now. And it's the one that I try to race against. It's how I keep myself motivated to be so transparent and to be so vulnerable really publicly, because I'm just like, I'm going to mess up. Like, yeah, I'm going to mess up. I mess up all the time. I think about stuff I did, and I'm like, and I wake up, I'm like, I can't believe I did that yesterday. And then I think, you know what? Someone else is going to get something from that. So I own it. It's there.
That's so good. That's so good. And we're such a terrible self-editors, right? We all the time like, but how does it look like? What people would think of me, and etc. And if you flip that and you think, well, actually, that could be helping someone, even if it's just one person in 7 billion people in the world, that's worth it.
It's big. It's big, and I've seen it happen over and over again. Where sometimes it takes years to understand it. Sometimes you'll never understand it. But I have had people write to me and say they don't even know, like they just found my name or something and they don't even know what's going on the last 5 years. And they'll say, in 2006, you posted something on your blog. And I was in college at the time and I was thinking about committing suicide. And you posted that one blog post out of 1,000. And I'm here today and I tracked you down and telling you the story 14 years later. This happens all the time, not maybe that drastically. Maybe it's just you made me think about a new comedy routine. And so I've taken that and turned it into a short film. And this happens all the time. And usually it's just years and years later. Sometimes it's immediate. And sometimes it's a groundswell, like what's happening right now.
Yeah.
But you just never know who you're affecting. You never know who you're influencing, and you never know who you're inspiring.
And if you keep the intention being the good, I'm doing no harm, I'm actually doing the good thing to the world, then
you try,
right?
You know, like that's the thing. You try to keep it as, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to take this. I'm an adult, so I'll take this calculated risk. I could be wrong. I fall on my face. And also I'm doing it with the understanding and the assumption that it's not going to hurt anybody. That's the best you can do, I think.
Yeah.
That's the best we can do.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's talk about fitting in, right? So when we are, sometimes we might say something, outside of to the world that it might just be weird and wrong and badly interpreted, right?
Yes.
And how do you deal with this, with that kind of feeling that you might never fit in? I feel exactly the same. It resonated so much with me when I was reading your words on that, because it's like, I never fit in, and I feel very weird. I felt very weird most of my life, right? And like, how do you deal with that when you are going to something bigger than yourself, and then you're entering this room with full of people who are probably more experienced than you, and you have that kind of, I need to fit in. How do you turn that into your power?
Well, so when I was a teenager, I was in the 8th grade. So it would have been like 14 or so. People would they call me weird my whole life, but they would kids started calling me weird to my face around then. And I told my mom, and I was so sad. And she said, when someone calls you weird, say thank you. Because they're saying that you're not like everybody else. You're not fitting, and of course I started doing that, and it completely changed it. I was almost waiting for somebody to call me weird, thank you. Because internally I started thinking, she's right. I don't, I'm a little teenager. I don't really know exactly what it is, but I never fit in. I've always been able to talk to all types of people, but I've never fit in, even when you might think, like, even among Black investors, I still am a little outlier, So today, when you think about it, speaking of outliers, 2013, 2 years before I get my first check, 2014 and 15, a year before I get my first check, I'm reading the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, right? I'm reading about these outliers who have such a compelling story, apparently, that they are in a book, like a best-selling book. And some of them, it's about these 10,000 hours and this and that. And and I'm just looking at these outliers and I'm like, that's me and then some. I'm broke. I'm living with my mom. We don't know where we're going to live tomorrow. All of this, but this is me too. And if you think about like the people that imagine anybody that you really just admire or that you've all like admired for years. Anyone. I don't know if you're going to find someone that you've admired for years who has played it safe, who has not been outspoken, who has not been considered strange or weird or not the best at the best at their job, at the thing that they do. And I remember I interviewed Khalees, the musician, a few weeks ago. She did Milkshake, My Milkshake Brings Other Boys to the Yard, that song. She did Bossy and a few other things. And so she's had like some of the most best-selling singles in the past, 20 years. And she said that she had to beg her label to get Milkshake on the radio. Beg. Nobody liked it. Everybody said it was weird. It didn't have a genre. It was dumb. It was simple. Everybody. And then it became one of the best-selling singles of all time because she dared to be weird and she dared to not care about that. So yeah, we're human. We're going to take things personally. I take things personally on a day-to-day basis, even though I'm better at it than I used to be. But being weird is absolutely the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
Mm.
I would not be talking to you right now. I would not have a multi-million-dollar fund. I would not have 130 investments and counting. I would not have an influence or power, as you've said, in Silicon Valley. I would not. Any of that. I would not have a book out. I would not have any of the things that I have today, except for family, which is wonderful, had I not been weird.
Fabulous. I love that. I think, after that, every one of us should be wanting to be weird.
You should be hoping that you're weird.
Exactly. That's a good thing. I love the changing perspective. Do you have any regrets?
Ooh, from life? How long is this? I regret little things. So I don't regret big things because I live by everything I've just said. I live by you go for it. I've gone for moonshot ideas my whole life and most of them have not worked. But I have had a do no harm policy. Now I regret the times that I harmed. I regret I wrote this blog post and I reposted it recently where I wrote it in December 2014, where I said that I had been wrong about 3 major things for the past decade prior to that.
Right.
And just this month, I reposted that to show how people can change and how people can do better. And so those 3 things I regret. Those are major things. They were about not having enough representation in my blog for in my 20s. I didn't have enough, in my opinion, enough Black women in my lesbian blog. And I had made out every excuse in the book to do that. And it was wrong. And other things that I listed. So I have very, it's when I say, oh, I have done harm. I went against my policy. I just didn't realize it. And now I'm going to own up to it. And then little things. Like there is this thing that I did a few months ago that has been haunting me. And maybe I'll just go online and say it because I'll say it right here. Okay, you're going to think this is so stupid. So I was speaking at Stanford, which, by the way, cool, right? Speaking at Stanford.
Yes.
Full room, full theater, full of people who came at night to see me. And somebody asked me something about Africa. And I pronounced the word diaspora like diaspora.
Right.
Okay. It's on film and it's on audio. And I hate that I did that. And it haunts me. Yeah. So those types of things I regret because it haunts me because it speaks to a larger misunderstanding of I don't understand enough, and if I had understood enough, I would know that that's not how you pronounce it. You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that rack my brain. I have a very, I told you I'm weird. So I have a very I'm all my mind is I'm always calculating. It's impossible for me to stop calculating. I have some sort of obsessive compulsive habit. So I can't stop calculating no matter what's going on. And little things like that happened a few months ago or maybe 10 years ago. I said something. I sent a text to somebody that I thought, oh, you're so like a girl, like a woman that I was like being a nerd around or something. And I was like, oh, why did I send that text 12 years ago? Those types of things like haunt me because of my obsessiveness.
Like you just wake up and say, oh my God, that thing.
Yeah. I remember I met this filmmaker. She did LGBTQ films, and this would have been 2007, 6, I don't know. And I knew her from Facebook, and I really loved her work. And we met outside of a bar, and she just kind of came up to me, and I recognized her. And I was drunk. That happens. And she said something like nice to me. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, that night, that moment, I decided I'm going to be like, I'm too cool for school. I was just like, oh, what do you do? And I knew her stuff, and I liked her stuff. But instead of saying I like fangirling, I went, oh, what do you do? And then she tried to tell me, and I was like, oh, that's nice. I'll have to check it out. And I don't know why I did that. I have no idea. But that sort of stuff haunts me. I don't even know her name anymore. I don't know what she looks like anymore. I just remember the moments, these little moments where I'm like, why did I betray myself like that? Why did I do that thing or that thing over there that was out of character? And it comes back.
Maybe we were just taking the risk, right?
Maybe.
It was your mind.
I don't know what I was thinking though. There was no good result from it. You know, I wasn't trying to hit on her. Mm-hmm. I wasn't trying to get a job. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just thinking I'm going to, in this moment, act like I'm cooler, than she is for some reason. It was like, I'm going to see what it's like to be a mean girl for a moment and see if I like that, but which is in itself is not too bad, but it's at someone else's expense. I was being a jerk. Mm. And so those little things I definitely regret, but big things like going after venture, trying something that failed or that didn't work out or that for years, didn't have the outcome I wanted. I'll never regret that. I'll never regret those moments, those big, huge, transformational moments, because I know that there's some good in all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. That's the best thing, right? When you made an analogy about when you're starting out, that you kind of like a band, right? So you talked about a band that you were representing, and I thought it was fascinating that when you are a new band and then you have to have all of the relentless energy to go and play to 5 people. And then maybe tomorrow it's to 10, and then to 50, and then eventually you might be playing to thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
How do you stay strong when you are in that moment of 0 to 1?
Yeah. One has to be enough. That's one way. One has to be enough. I think, what is a good example? You were on my podcast. We were one of the very first people on my podcast, the first 10 interviews, just celebrated a year. And I remember when I decided, having already been well-known and already, having a lot under my belt with investments and all sorts of things, I wanted to start this podcast from scratch. And I wanted to do it independently. I had been offered to have it sponsored in a way that it was like under someone else's umbrella. So I'd have to do what they wanted and interview who they wanted, but it would be my voice and I'd be paid a lot. And I had turned that down. And so I was doing it all independent. And I remember thinking, like, I'm breaking into, really, even though I've been on podcasts and I've had another series that had other metrics, I'm actually just breaking into podcasting. What if only a few people listen? So before I even started, I had to have that talk with myself of, wait a minute, what if a few people listen? What if a few people listen. And again, I talk about in my book, repurposing things all the time. And that was it. It was like, wait a second, that can't be a negative for this situation. It has to be a positive because someone is going to take their time and listen to me and listen to who I decided was a good interview and take something from and then maybe get something from that. That's huge. So my goal was if we have, 10 listeners, but they listen every episode, we win. And then you go on to have thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners who as soon as I post an episode, you just see the numbers going up, And if I had started off with, I won't pursue this, I'll do it 2 times. And if I don't have 10,000 listeners on the first 2, then it's not worth it. Then I would have never gotten to the point.
Mm. Yeah.
So I think that's one way is that it can't always just be about the payoff up front, and you have to find a good reason. And maybe when you're doing your diligence on the thing to do next, you do measure it and weigh it and say, actually, it probably won't be worth it. I'm going to put my time and energy and talent towards something else because I've done this diligence of understanding that the metrics don't align with what the impact I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
That's fair too.
And how do you define the impact you want to make?
That I want to make personally or one does? Personally, I want to catalyze. So everything I do is about catalyzing. It's about catalyzing those who at an inflection point. Right?
Yeah.
So that's it's a broad group of people, but I do it in so many different ways. That's the impact, because I know if I always do that, if you think about inflection points, and you think about if I'm the hammer or the wind or whatever kind of analogy we're going to do, if I'm if I'm meeting you where lightning strikes, and I can do something in that moment, that one moment that accelerates what you do, that gives you more years to do what you want to do, gives you more time to do what you want to do, and then therefore it impacts other people, then I can stand in one place and I can do that over and over again, and I can have that at scale, and that can reap so many benefits, so many different ways. Some of which, of course, I won't see. Some of which I will see in real time. Some of which I just won't see in my lifetime. That's it. It's that be there at your inflection point and then strike.
That's so beautiful. I have so many more questions to you, and I'm conscious of your time. So,
yes, I'm
okay. So,
right into
yes,
inflection
points. Exactly. I want to ask so many more questions. So, I'm going to do the following. So, I have 2 things that I usually wrap up the interviews with. So, one is a quick fire with 3 simple questions about your past, your present, and your future. And the second one is a little game, which is like a choose your adventure type of game. And I'll tell you about the game once we go there. But I'm going to firstly ask you the quick fire questions. So the first question is, what is your best childhood memory?
Oh, that's a quick fire. I don't know. I don't know if I have a best childhood memory. I don't know if I have one that fast. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to think about that. Why I don't have a great childhood memory that just pops up.
You might have many with your mom.
I may have too many, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I had a good childhood, but I just can't remember. That's interesting. Okay, next question.
Second question. So, something that you're very curious about now that no one knows.
That I'm curious about?
And no one knows.
That no one knows I'm curious about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm very curious about, like, marketing at scale, like amplifying everything that I do at scale, and really amplifying it in a very, on multiples. I've on the weekends, I've been studying different ways of doing that.
No,
It's
it,
not
it
exciting,
is
but
very connected to
this
your
is what I'm
purpose of
curious about.
catalyzing, right?
Yeah. 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 So it's like I'm studying now how to take it to another level without becoming, I don't want to become a celebrity. So, so I'm studying people who are not celebrities, who are maybe well known within their groups, but the thing that they do is more known than they are. And right now I have I mean, it's cool, but it's like not what I want. I have this ability where I can, if I wanted to, I really could pull a couple of levers, say yes to a couple of opportunities, and just become sort of this um, character right now.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. So I'm thinking about like bigger picture stuff, just like
Nice.
kind of 5-dimensional chess.
Nice. Is it connected to your latest projects, the Backstage Crowd and the masterclass?
Oh yeah, everything is always connected. So the masterclass I'm doing, actually, I do it every Wednesday, and I'm very excited about it. You can find that at itsaboutdamntime.com/VIP. You can still sign up for it. It's an 8-week thing, and you can jump in anytime. And then backstagecrowd.com is our new investor syndicate. So, with things going on in the world, a lot has been brought to light. Same things we've been yelling and saying and fighting for years and years and years, and for decades and decades, is coming to light. And one of those things is in the economy in the United States, and investing. And so, because I've done all this work before and people kind of know me in this lane, there's a lot that I'm able to influence right now. And so, instead of, I actually literally cried on a podcast episode a few days ago, just telling other investors that they needed to take us more seriously as Black people. And I thought, I'm going to do that, and that's fine. And I hope that they come around. But in the meantime, I'm going to go to the crowd. I'm going to go to allies. I'm going to go to other entrepreneurs. And we're together going to put together rounds of funding that can sustain a company for a year and a half to do their thing. So we don't have to explain it to these handful of people who hold the purse strings today. And so backstagecrowd.com is where investors can get together in our syndicate and invest alongside with us. It's nothing new. I haven't invented anything, but very, very few Black syndicate leads exist in the venture space. And what I want to be doing the next year and a half or so is handing over $500,000, $1 million checks to entrepreneurs that we have vetted, so that they can just get to work, rather than having to spend 80% of their time explaining their Blackness or their womanness or this or their queerness or this or that. So I think it's going to be a very, very impactful initiative for sure.
Team Arlan. I mean, yes.
Backstagecrowd.com. Join us, man. It's and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to, everything I do, I like to have a little bit of education and fun and like collaboration. So I'm going to also be, bringing everybody along the journey.
Yeah. One thing. So you fast forward into the future, and you developed a superpower to change one thing in the world. What is the one thing you're going to change?
Oh, there's equality. Everybody kind of starts with on the same footing, and then it's up to you to get where you want to go. 100%. That's what I would do. Everybody starts on the same footing, and that's across all types of disparities.
Beautiful.